Omaha Mom Talks, proudly sponsored by Diventures Swim School, where giggles and goggles unite. Welcome back to Omaha Mom Talks. I'm your host, Jessie, and I'm so excited to introduce today's guest, Jaime Weatherholt. She is a mom, a licensed mental health therapist, and certified hypnotherapist based here in Omaha, Nebraska. Jaime specializes in hypnotherapy, past life regression, and trauma healing, where she blends science-backed techniques with more holistic approaches. Jaime is the founder of Enlightened Counseling and Healing, where she incorporates healing modalities such as EMDR, brain spotting, hypnosis, and past life regression to help clients work through issues such as anxiety, depression, and trauma. She is also the host of a podcast, The Shrink Show, where she dives into all things mental health in a way that's educational, engaging, and refreshingly real. Today, we're digging into the fascinating world of hypnosis and past life regression. They're a little woo-woo and might be new to you, but I'm so excited for you guys to hear from Jaime about how these healing modalities work and how they can be healing tools for self-discovery and growth. Let's get into it. All right, Jaime, welcome to Omaha Mom Talks.
Hi, thanks for having me.
Yes, I'm excited that I get another excuse to chat with you and connect with you at this time in person. Can you share just a little bit with all of our listeners, just a little bit about you, your background, your family, and what you're up to these days?
Yeah, so my name is Jaime Weatherholt, and I live here in Omaha, Nebraska. I am a licensed clinical social worker. I have my own private practice doing just outpatient therapy with adults and anyone who's experienced trauma of any level, anxiety, depression, mood disorders. And I live here with my family. So I have my husband, and we have 3 kiddos. My stepson is 16 and old. And we have a 7-year-old and 5-year-old.
Okay. Yeah, super fun. And then tell me a little bit about what led you to your work as a therapist. I think that's always interesting.
Yes. I think this is always interesting for me because I did not want anything to do with the mental health field.
Okay.
I went into social work thinking I was going to do macro level social work or work with communities on some level. I wanted to do post-adoption work and advocacy work. And I went to graduate school out in Seattle at the University of Washington. That was my excuse to live somewhere else because I knew I was going to settle down in Omaha. So I was like, okay, I'll move somewhere, but I know I'm going to come back. So when I came back, everyone was job searching. That was during the recession. And so every social worker was looking for a job because DHS had a lot of changes.
Yeah.
So I fell into the mental health field at that point doing case management.
Okay.
And I was terrified because I was like, I was very upfront. I'm like, I have no experience in mental health. I hated psychology. I didn't understand it. And then I fell in love with the clients. And all of a sudden it just made sense once I started working with the population. Mm-hmm. So after that, I just stayed in the mental health field and then stumbled into therapy after case management.
Can you share with us just a little bit about why post-adoption is important to you in that work?
Absolutely. So I'm an adoptee. I'm a transracial adoptee. So that means I was raised in a family that's a different race than me. So I'm Korean. My family is white. And growing up, I, because of the looks, knew that I was adopted my whole life. And it was very much spoken about growing up.
Okay.
So I grew up going to summer camps for adoptees. And that started around middle school, which truly was just emotionally life-saving for me because in those pivotal years, in those teenage years when you don't know who you are and you're trying to find out, just where you fit into the world. Yeah. It was so lovely to have that community established at that very important age.
Yes.
So that community kind of became my second family. Then we all started just having vacations together, all through high school and then through really college. Special. And then I decided to be a camp counselor at those same camps. That's also what drew me into social work because a lot of the counselors, the adults that were essentially our mentors that we grew up with, when we were, seniors in high school, they're like, what are you guys going to do? And I'm like, I always thought I'd want to be a teacher because I'm like, I like to help people and I like children. And he's like, have you heard of social work? And I was like, no. And so he explains it to me and I'm like, this sounds magic because social work is so great. You help pretty much any population you can think of.
Yeah.
It's so broad, but it's I feel like it kind of ties up the loose ends of all the other fields that exist. Mm-hmm. So it just made so much sense when I fell into it.
Yeah. So just similarly, I did not want to do social work. So my sister had degrees in social work, a BSW and MSW. So when I went to undergrad, I was like, I'm going to be my own person. Yeah. And I studied family studies.
Oh, like the sister.
So different.
Social work.
I am so unique. And then they had me take a social work class as like an elective or I don't even remember. And I just fell in love with it. Yeah. And I was like, oh my gosh, these are my people. This is my language. I love it.
It just made sense.
Yeah. And so I love that you are passionate about social work. And I think that kind of ties me into what I want to mention is that we have a shared history. We're social workers together. Yes. So Jamie and I met, like maybe 6 years ago, I think, because how old is your oldest?
7.
You were nursing at the time, and I think I just had like a brand new baby. So so like six-ish years ago, we both worked just part-time at Children's Hospital as medical social workers, and Jamie trained me.
Yes. I totally forgot that I trained you too.
It was like, so I just remember like, I had this idea about you, as we all create ideas about people when we see them, and you like blew all of that out of the water because like you were much more like, I don't see you and think of you as like a woo-woo person, but you are, and that took me for a loop. Right. And you also would sometimes do this like good cop, bad cop thing. And like, it would just like crack me up. So I love when I meet someone and they surprise me. Like they have layers and they don't just fall into like my assumptions about them. So that made me laugh about you
when you were telling me that of like a little bit ago. And before I came here, I was updating my spreadsheets. I was like, it's Friday. I have to do my budget spreadsheets on Excel and...
Well, yeah, Jamie would be like on our breaks, like, and here's my budget and here's my spreadsheet. And I was like, that seems like a lot. I'm going to be
very detailed,
like Googling what's going on this weekend. It was just so different.
Yeah, but itineraries for life.
So yes, things. I love that. So we worked both part-time, at Children's, but that was like our side gigs. Yes. And so now we have been able to be friends in private practice, and we refer folks to each other and collaborate. And then we have a shared friend as well. So we've also had social time together too.
Yeah.
Which is cool. Well, I recently did an episode on Omaha Mom Talks where I gave listeners some information about like how to get started in therapy and how to find a therapist that's a good fit. And I briefly, okay, thank you. Yes. We briefly went over some healing modalities that people may hear or be interested in. And I'm super excited to chat with you today and for you to give some education to our listeners about some of the healing modalities that you offer that I feel like, well, one, I'm not trained in them, so I love learning about them, but I feel like they're a little woo-woo and a little like alternative to some folks.
Sure.
Which again, like, when I see you, I don't think like you're woo-woo or alternative. Especially when I see you with your spreadsheets and your organization and your list, like you give off very type A energy. Yes. And those folks generally aren't also like woo-woo, free spirit, just let it happen. Magical, mystical creatures, right? Yes. So I do think that you are unique in that. So I'm super excited to talk with you about two of your specialties, hypnotherapy and past life regression. So before we get into the details of like what those are and why those are helpful for folks, I'd love to hear like what drew you to these practices. Were there any like experiences that made it all like click for you or want you to learn more and get trained in those healing modalities?
Sure. So prior to getting trained in those two, I had already been trained in EMDR and in brain spotting, which I think are more, EMDR especially, more knowledgeable to just general population. and I was going to open my private practice, and I was really nervous because I was like, I don't know, I it just feels like what's going to set me apart, or how am I going to guarantee client, all the fears, the lovely imposter syndrome. And my husband was truly the one who like encouraged me to get into hypnotherapy.
Okay.
He is nothing in the realm of mental health or healing or self-care, any of this. None of this makes sense to him, and he has zero interest. But he's like, you should get trained in hypnosis so you can hypnotize me to like stop procrastinating, or, get up on time, or, just things that would benefit him as a joke.
Yeah.
And I always say and my mom always says there's no such thing as coincidences. And so I found another therapist in town who does hypnotherapy.
Okay.
And she trains and certifies people in hypnotherapy. Was
she on The Shrink Show? I think I listened to that episode.
Lisa Parisian.
Okay.
Yes. And so she has the A+ Academy of Hypnosis here in Omaha. And she did like a meet and greet 101, like this is what a certification could look like. This is who it's for, blah, blah, blah. And so I went just out of curiosity, and same questions as you, like how exactly is hypnosis useful in therapy? Because my only background was stage hypnosis for comedic acts.
Yeah, same,
right?
same.
So she was really helpful in describing ways in which she uses it for her clients, how it really is similar to those who are trained in EMDR or clients who've done EMDR therapy. It's similar in how it works in the brain. It's just a different path to get there. It's like a different route, if you will.
Okay. So let's assume that people hear hypnosis and they think it's like woo-woo or mystical or magical.
Yes.
How do you make it approachable and relatable to clients? Like, what's your kind of educational explanation of if people that are skeptical or even nervous?
Oh, absolutely. So I describe, just to know what hypnosis is, first of all, hypnosis is a focused state of attention. So you and I just sitting here.
Are you hypnotizing me right now?
At this very moment.
I felt it. No,
Did you feel that?
Yes.
It's happening right now, Jessie.
She's so good, you guys.
You guys. But even like you and I having this conversation, or a listener listening to this conversation, you are already having a focused state of attention, saying, oh, I'm going to listen to what you're saying, and I'm going to absorb what you're saying, and I'm able to take it or leave it, right? That's a suggestion. And your brain is probably also simultaneously like, I'm aware of the time, I have other appointments, I've got things this weekend.
That dual awareness.
Right. Our brain can multitask. It can think like up to 7 thoughts at one time. So very normal with hypnosis. The idea is your focused state is still allowing you to absorb and be suggestible to what you're focused on. So what's great is it's a very natural state of mind. All of us do it at some point or another. Now, what you also use with hypnosis is they call it trance.
Okay.
In therapy world, you would call it dissociation.
And I do feel like more people are learning about dissociation, which I'm glad.
Yes.
So I think that's a term a lot of people are familiar with.
Right. They're synonyms because it's different modality, same concept, right? So with hypnosis, we use that state of trance, meaning you're in a very relaxed state of mind. You're focused on what you're listening to, and you're relaxed enough to be suggestible.
Okay.
So again, just having like a one-on-one conversation is a light level of hypnosis, because your brain is like, yeah, I'm going to take what you're saying, or I also, again, have free will, and I can say, oh, I disagree with that, but that's fine, right? You can still focus on whatever it is that's happening.
Yeah. So there's no magical powers that you have. You just have this enhanced training and skills to be able to help guide someone into a relaxed state, but they can resist it.
Oh, absolutely. Hypnosis is 100% voluntary. Whenever you're getting hypnotized, you decide if you want to be hypnotized. And again, you decide if you want to take what suggestions are thrown at you.
Okay.
I mean, I could say, hey, Jessie, the sky is now orange. And your brain can say, I disagree, right? But you can also be like, for a split second, do I want to believe in that or no?
What would you say to somebody who is like, I tried to be hypnotized and it just doesn't work on me? Like, what are the rationales for that?
Yeah, I hear that very often. So everybody is capable of being hypnotized. One, if you want to. Two, if you have just the cognitive ability to focus. So if, you know, we're going into like learning disabilities or cognitive impairments. And if you speak the same language that I do.
Yeah.
Otherwise, you decide. So typical examples tend to be going back to stage hypnosis. They're like, well, I tried and I didn't. However, you have to think about, do you want to get up on stage and kind of act a fool in front of this lovely audience? Some people are not as willing to do that. So, of course, they weren't hypnotizable in that moment. But if given a different setting and a different circumstance, perhaps you are hypnotizable.
Okay.
Other states of mind that I describe to people that most people can maybe relate to, if you like read a book or watch a movie or show and you emotionally respond to that, like you laugh or you cry or you jump at a scary part, that's also a level of trance because it's not literally happening, but your brain has convinced you that it's happening right now. That scary thing was about to jump out of the screen.
Yeah.
And if that has happened, that's a light level of hypnosis. You were very suggestible to believe that was happening to you.
Wow.
Or if you've driven home and realized you reached your destination and maybe, did I run a red light? Did I
black out? I was driving.
Did I even like see what I was doing? But you were in a relaxed enough state of mind to physically maneuver a vehicle and get home safely. So that is almost what that trance state feels like. It's relaxed. You're kind of zoned out. It's like a daydream, but you're still functioning. You're still awake. You're still conscious. In that example, you're maneuvering a vehicle.
Yeah.
So very common ways in which we go in and out of trance.
Yeah. Well, I think that makes it really relatable and understandable to folks that it is a state that you've already been in, right?
Yes.
So it's not foreign to your brain and to your body.
Yes.
What are some of the common things that folks are reaching out to you to address via hypnotherapy?
I get a lot of anxiety, like just the umbrella of, oh, I just feel so anxious. I can't focus. I get a lot of what I like to work with, parents who are realizing, wow, I'm very triggered by my children and I'm responding in ways that don't make sense. Like I rationally know they're little, I need to validate their emotions and get on their level. But for some reason, my impulse is, I go to this crazy place and I just can't help it, right? It's like that instinct to maybe parent the way that they were and they don't like it, or even in the opposite way and they're like, where is this coming from? So they want to get to the root of more than just learn the skills. They're like, I know the skills. I've read the parenting books. I've taken the classes. I've gone to therapy.
There's this
but I'm
automatic
still
response.
Doing something that isn't helpful.
Yeah, I love that. So many of the moms that I work with in my practice have childhood wounds or attachment wounds.
Yes.
And so that is the perfect breeding place for all of your unhealed stuff to get triggered when you become a parent of young children.
Yes.
And so I use a lot of like parts work and inner child work, but I love hearing of this additional healing modality of using hypnosis to help heal some of those wounds and help parents be able to respond in ways that they prefer.
Yes.
I love that. That's so cool. So I think that there are so many, again, just like misconceptions about hypnosis. We see it on TV. We see it, like the first thing that comes to my mind is the movie Get Out. Have you seen that one?
Oh, I haven't, but I know what
and
it's
he
about.
goes into a state of trance or whatever. And, but there's a lot that we see on TV. Are there any like myths or misconceptions that you happily like to clear up about hypnosis?
Like I like to bring up Office Space, you know, when he gets stuck in trance.
Yeah, okay.
The hypnotherapist like passes away And then like the movie says, oh, he got stuck in that trance-like state. And he's just like
fixed there.
He's just very, very neutral, apathetic, and just whatever. He's in la la land. You can never get stuck in hypnosis.
Okay.
Because again, your brain is not only it's awake and conscious in hypnosis, but you are deciding if you want to listen. It is only suggestions that I'm giving you. It's not mind control. Mm-hmm. So that's another misconception this is mind control. I'm taking over. You're going to do whatever. And you are in complete control the entire time. Because again, just because you're in a relaxed state of mind, just because you're listening to what I'm saying, doesn't mean you're going to do something that's against your values, your ethics, or who you are.
Right.
Because
otherwise,
in the end,
you could make a lot of money making some recordings.
I mean, I sure
people
could.
To do a lot of stuff.
Right. And I think what truly blew me away in the training, and I kept, because, when we were getting trained, we were learning, this is how, you put people into trance. This is how you get people out. This is things that you do to make sure they're in trance. And I was just laughing because it's like you see behind the curtain. And again, going back to the comedians that I've seen do it, mm-hmm. I'm like, oh my gosh, now I understand why they said and did what they did on stage. Okay. Because to us, we're just in the audience thinking, oh, this, he's just being silly, or like they told people to go back and sit down. But truly, that stage hypnotherapist had to be very skilled to know you're not in trance all the way. Like, yeah, you're following my instructions, but you're not deep enough. Go back and sit down.
Okay.
Yeah. And again, it's crazy to believe, but the people who do the goofy things on stage were choosing to do so. Mm-hmm. But when you think about when you're getting ready to go out with your friends and you're like, I'm going to have some drinks. We're going to see this comedian. I think I'm going to get on stage. Like, I'm that personality. I think I'm totally willing to just see, let's just try it out. Right. Yeah. And when you're kind of already in that mental state of, yeah, I'm going to do that. Mm-hmm. I'm going to try it out. Of course, you're already halfway there.
You're agreeing to it.
You've already agreed to, I know I'm going to make a fool because this is the type of show I'm about to go to. Mm-hmm. So it's kind of wild to believe that absolutely they decided
to do those
going
silly
to
things.
do this.
Yeah, like bark like a dog or whatever. We had them come to our college too.
Oh yeah. The other example I like to share is I went with one of my best friends, and she was on stage and like one of the craziest ones the whole show. So like everybody was very like extra. Oh wow, like this one was fun. So the comedian obviously like kept going back to her and like having her do more wild things. And then at the very end of the show, he's about to like dismiss the stage people back to their table, and he's like, hey, who are you here with? And so my table, we all raised our hand. He points at me, and I'm pretty sure he's going to say something about race, because he's like, what ethnicity are you? And I'm like, well, I'm Korean. So then he whispers something to my friend to be like, because the final joke was what she says into the microphone. So he whispers it to my friend, and my friend snaps out of trance, and she goes, I'm not saying that. Good. And she stood up and went back to her seat.
Because it didn't align with her values.
Yes, it did not align. And I think that's a great example that shows audience members that just because you are doing what he is suggesting to you, her values were, that is very inappropriate. That's my best friend.
Yeah.
Bye.
Yes.
I'm going to go sit down.
So, yeah, and I think that's sometimes people's fear is like, am I going to lose control? And so I think that's like a beautiful example is like you are still driving the bus.
Yes, complete control.
Yeah. So when I think of people reaching out for hypnosis, my brain goes to like wanting to stop a behavior like smoking or maybe concerns with eating or binge eating. But I'm curious, like for moms who are struggling with anxiety, stress, generational trauma, it sounds like hypnosis can also be a great healing modality for those type of issues, not just necessarily like stopping a behavior or a lifestyle. Right. Is that what I'm hearing?
Right. Absolutely.
Yeah, I love that because I don't think of that initially. And so I think that's important to put into minds for all the moms that are juggling all of the things, and how this can help with stress and generational trauma as well. So if someone is curious about trying hypnosis, what should they look for in a therapist so that they're making sure they're getting somebody that's credible and well-trained?
Sure. So if you're looking for kind of what you were saying, if you're going on the side of like smoking cessation or weight loss or maybe habit reversal training, the thing about hypnosis or hypnotherapy, those two words are used interchangeably in the community because some people are like, well, I want hypnotherapy, not hypnosis. And I'm like, it's the same. So you have to look at hypnosis isn't a regulated license like our social work degree is in Nebraska. In other states, that differs. So you can look for a hypnotherapist or a hypnotist, but not all hypnotists are mental health therapists.
Right.
Okay. So if you're wanting something that's more like habit reversal and just like behavioral changes, you can look for a hypnotherapist who does their training or markets to that specific population. There's a gal in my office who specifically does only past life regression and smoking cessation. And then she's like, I pass off everything else to my hypnotherapist.
Okay.
Because she's like, I understand I'm not trained in mental health therapy. I'm not trained in the mental health field.
So she's a hypnotist and not a therapist.
Yes. And then there are a growing number of therapists who are getting trained in hypnosis as a modality. Mm-hmm. So those would be, you're looking for those extra letters that you talked about in your prior episode. And they will be trained not only in the mental health symptomology that you're coming in with, but the technique of hypnosis.
Hey, Omaha Mom Talks, it's me, Jessie. I'm super excited to share with you guys that we are partnering with Diventures Swim School. Learning how to swim and do it safely is a huge priority for our family. I'm heading over to Diventures later this week to tour their facilities and get my girls enrolled in classes. All of their classes are customized based on age and skill level. I took a really easy, quick quiz online to determine which class was best for my kids. If you're interested in swim lessons for your kids, please check them out at Diventures Swim School to determine which class would be best for you. Let's shift gears a little bit to past life regression. So you were the first person that introduced me even to this term. Like I didn't know anything about it. And we were like in our little social work office at Children's, like our backs were to each other. We were both like doing documentation and you're like, tell me about this like wild past life reading you got, and I didn't know anything about it, and I'm just like,
you're probably like, what is happening?
Well,
over there?
like you just got done with your spreadsheet, so I was like, who is this girl? She's so multi-layered. So let's just explain what is past life regression, and how do you explain it to folks?
Absolutely. So past life regression, it's using the modality of hypnosis to talk to. And this is where you choose the term. You talk to your soul, your subconscious, your internal memory of past lives. So people who are doing past life regression believe that you have a prior lifetime to this lifetime.
That I have lived on this earth or somewhere.
Or in
prior,
this realm.
Yes, prior to where I'm
in another
today.
life.
So that's the belief of people who are doing past life regression. Okay.
Yes.
Keep going. I'm tracking. Is there more?
No, you're good. That's the big.
Okay. And so when somebody comes to you or specifically is scheduling a past life regression, I always want to say past life reading. What language do you use?
You can say either one.
I want to make sure. If somebody is like, oh, how could past life readings help me presently and today or tomorrow? Like, what would you tell them?
Absolutely. So the idea, if we have lived a past life, people who believe that believe I either am learning something from that past life or I'm experiencing something, and it could be either the same experience, the same life lesson, the same people, places, things, or it could be opposing. So that's where people may believe in karma.
Okay.
And you have to remember with karma, there's no good or bad. It's like emotions. This is how I teach it to my therapy clients. I'm like, there's no good or bad emotion. We're just experiencing them, right? You have to have sadness to have happiness. You can't have just one. Well, experiences are very similar. It's the idea of I have to know what it's like to be a poor person to understand the depth of being a rich person. But I wouldn't know the difference if I've only been one, right? I can guess, I can imagine, but that lived experience gives you that depth, right? And so some people believe maybe in a past life, I had a very bad relationship with my mother, let's say. But in this life, it's so fulfilling. It's so great. Or maybe in my past life, I was the parent and they were the child. And in this life, they're the parents and I'm the child. And we're learning the difference. Our soul is understanding, oh, this is what it's like. This is maybe what our past life, when it was flipped, this is maybe what she was going through that I didn't realize I was doing. So it's the idea of what lessons do I need to learn to better understand or help me in this life. That's also a really common reason why people seek out past life regression. They're like, just what lessons am I missing? Or what do I need to understand about this life? It's like they're looking for just a little bit of clarity because they have a suspicion that they're maybe missing that lesson.
Yeah. For what can someone expect for a past life regression? Like how long is it? What, is there any aftercare? Yeah.
So logistics, at least for the way I do past life regressions, so this is not a therapy, like mental health therapy modality.
That's important, yes.
Yes, insurance doesn't take it. And it's a much longer session. So I tell clients to expect anywhere between 2.5 to 3 hours.
Oh yeah, those are long.
Yes.
Yeah.
Because a lot of it is I need to get you into that state of trance that we talked about earlier. So I need to get you as relaxed as you can be. So we're basically bypassing that conscious part of your brain, which is the front part of your brain. She's the part that's like, I've got this appointment in like 3 hours. Oh, I got to make sure this is ready for dinner. We just got to turn the volume down. So she's not over analyzing. Oh, are you sure that's what you're thinking? Are you sure that's what's going on? I also call it like the anxious part of your brain. We're just turning down the volume. She's still on. She has opinions, but the volume's down enough to where it just doesn't matter anymore, right? Kind of like that drive home when you're in that trance state, right? So the first part is just getting you relaxed enough to follow my instructions. Then I will suggest or ask you to go back in time. Your brain, your soul, whatever you want to call it, it's going to choose where it takes you. So I tell clients, it's like you and I are kind of on this ride together, and we're going to figure out what you need to see today. And it's wild because people, depending on how they experience, some people see like they're experiencing, oh, I'm walking into this room, and they can describe it to me. Some people, it's like third person, like I can see myself walking into this room. I have some people that are like, I don't see a dang thing, but I get this feeling that I'm in this big room and I can feel and remember the texture of it. So, like when you can notice someone's presence. And so it's just this knowing. And just like we dream, sometimes we dream in color, sometimes it's pictures, sometimes it's a full-on movie, right? Sometimes it's vivid, sometimes it's fuzzy. Same thing with past life regression. So the experience itself, you and I are kind of discovering together. We'll live, or in the session, we'll go through whatever this past life or lives, plural, that you need to see. And then we'll have like a debriefing period in which we're going to really piece together some, because a lot of times people come in also with just questions they have. They just want further questions that maybe didn't get answered in the past life experience that they saw or experienced. And so we'll kind of just wrap up those ends. And then we'll come back into this lifetime and be like, okay, now you're back in my office, blah, blah, blah. And
orient you back into this room and this space.
I do them so they're audio recorded because they're so long. So good, because it's a lot of information for people to remember, first of all. And when you're in such a relaxed state, you're not going to remember everything. It feels, a lot of times people tell me hypnosis feels like that moment when you first wake up, but you haven't opened your eyes yet, and you could easily just like fall back asleep into that dream you had, or you could open your eyes and like have the world ready to go, right? But you know that weird phase right before you fully wake up, you know, you're still kind of in a daze.
Groggy.
Yeah. So when people come out of hypnosis, they're like, wow, I feel really tired, or I feel like I just woke from a nap and I'm so relaxed. And it's like, you got to wake up. Even though I'm like, you were awake the whole time. You were talking to me for 3 hours.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right.
So is there any aftercare? I think of like with EMDR, I'm always like, you know, drink water, be extra kind to yourself, listen to your body, rest if you can, if you're feeling tired, that sort of thing.
At most, I mean, I always recommend that because those are lovely skills for everybody to apply. We could all stay a little bit more hydrated for the generation that has our emotional support drinks and everything.
Always.
So I'm like, okay, you can get grounded, get back in your body. But otherwise, because it's such a natural state of mind, people, they go back to work, they go back home, they continue on their day with whatever. They obviously, because it was a deeper session, they're going to be reflecting, I think, just on their own with what they discovered or
new insights.
Yeah, they're going to go home and tell people about it, things like that. But there's really, there's not as much residue of effects that I see compared to like trauma work, like EMDR.
Yeah, that makes sense. Okay. Well, kind of like we were talking about with hypnosis, I think that a lot of the moms that I work with, myself included, are really big on breaking generational cycles. So I think past life regression could be something helpful in healing some family stuff. How do you incorporate that, or what do you see?
Absolutely.
Do you see that, I guess, a lot?
Yeah, I see that with both my hypnosis clients and with the past life regression client.
Okay.
So with past life regression, it makes me think, sometimes I've had people, they'll go into a past life and they're describing all, and we'll stop at various stages of that same life. We'll be like, oh, I'm a teenager, now I'm in my 20s, now I'm in my 40s. And like, we go all the way through that lifetime, right? And when we have a reoccurring character that's coming along, like, oh, this little boy this one person I had, they're like, this little boy kept coming into my shop, and like, I owned the store. I have no children, but I really took a liking to this child. And like, he ends up taking over the company for me when I grow old. And like, we kind of just had this relationship in which he was kind of like my son. And then I repeatedly would ask, like, you know, they say eyes are the window to the soul. So when you look into his eyes, does he feel or look familiar to you? And throughout that, at least for this person, they're like, no, not really. But then as we did a couple more stops, they're like, oh my gosh, that is my son from this lifetime. And they were noticing that the way that they were treating that child in the past life was similar but different to how they treat their literal son in this present life. And that experience, when they came out of hypnosis and we were just debriefing at the end, they were like, oh my gosh, I realize, you know, maybe in this lifetime, I could actually adopt some of the traits that I was doing in that past life to better connect to my son in this life. And it's like, I didn't see that as an option. Like, it just never came to mind. And so for that person, they were able to leave thinking, you know what, I, you know, quote unquote, lived it, because I relived it in this past life regression session, how I interacted with this child. So I'm going to go home and begin to do that.
And I have those skills already.
Right. It's like you forgot that you knew how to do this, but now I remember.
Okay. So I'll just put it out there. Like, I am new to kind of learning about spiritual things and the, you know, like past lives. And you were the first one who ever told me. So I was like, what, you know? And so for somebody who I guess is like starting on wanting to learn a little bit about more of like the woo-woo things, like, are there any places or things that you suggest as far as like how to get started with learning more, just before you dive in and are like, yes, I believe it all?
Yes. And I mean, there's so many different modalities. There's like, when you go into that woo-woo spiritual world, I think for most people, you're drawn to whatever you're drawn to.
That's true.
So I personally have always been infatuated by time. Like, even ever since I was a child, I would always, when I was little, I would tell my best friends, like first grade, I would be like, do you ever get worried that you're going to go to sleep and then you're going to wake up and you're going to be a baby and you have to start all over again? And I was so stressed out about the idea of starting over and having to relearn everything I already knew. And it like made me upset to go to bed. And I remember worrying about that. As a grown up, I'm like, that's not a typical worry. Like children, where does that come from?
Right.
And I remember, I was raised in a Catholic household, but I remember asking what reincarnation meant. And so my mom was very literal. She's like, oh, it just means this. And I'm like, oh. And in my head, I go, that makes sense. I like that. I am choosing to believe that, even though my spiritual upbringing is not teaching me that.
Right.
But it just made sense. It's like it clicked.
Yes.
And so for me, the idea of time or past lives probably fit and made sense because I was already naturally inclined to anything of that, realm. I think there are some people where they like there's a lot of energy healing that exists nowadays or Reiki. And so if you're drawn to that, then go try it on for size.
Yes.
There's astrology, there's numerology, there's
the other thing
so
I
many
always
other
think of
things.
is you don't always have to understand why. Like, I think people want to make sense. Like, why am I drawn? You don't always have. You just are. Like 20 years ago started doing acupuncture for pain. And at that time, I couldn't have explained to you how it worked.
Right.
I just knew it worked, and I have a pain disorder. And so I was like, I love it. Now I've learned more about it. But back then I just was like, I don't care why it works.
Yeah.
It works. It makes me feel better, and I want to feel better. And so sometimes just like if you're drawn to it and it's healthy and you are finding some relief in whatever your symptoms are, or some insights, lean into it. And everyone else doesn't have to understand it either.
Right.
Or people don't have to necessarily all agree with it or align with it.
Absolutely.
Especially when it comes to things that are a little bit more woo-woo or alternative.
Yes.
I think that I really want to do a past life regression with you. So I think that we should get that on the books, and then I can share maybe with listeners of all the cool lives I've probably lived before.
Yeah. Clearly. Nothing but good ones.
Oh, yes, I'm sure. But I have a friend from college who I love, Kate Hula, and she does a lot. She's a very gifted woman, but she had told me she does Akashic records. And she had told me that just in passing, I didn't do a reading with her, but that me and my daughter, my oldest, that we have lived multiple lives together. And I almost didn't even need to hear that because I knew it. My soul knew it.
Right.
She is me, I am her. I don't know the details of our past lives together, but I just get her in a weird way. We just are so connected. Yes. And she pushes all of my buttons and I push all of hers.
Right.
And so I just knew that, but it was cool to hear it of oh yeah.
Right. Someone else sees it.
Yeah, of course.
And I love that example too, because that's something else that I remind people when you're in hypnosis, especially past life regression hypnosis. And I'm asking you something are you outside or inside? And you know what it feels like to say something truthful and to say something that's a lie. And even hearing, oh, you and your daughter had a past life together, if that feels truthful or if it feels like that doesn't make any sense, right?
Yeah.
And so that's why I will ask you questions in hypnosis, but you'll know the right answer because you won't just agree to it because you're in this relaxed state. You're in a state of trance. You're going to say, oh, no, that doesn't feel right. No, I'm inside, definitely.
Yeah, that makes sense. Is there anything you, either from your own experience with a reading or anything with your clients, obviously maintaining confidentiality, that you can share with listeners that's was really insightful or really groundbreaking? I don't want to put you on the spot to make you share stuff from your own.
No, not at all. So let's see. There's so many, I feel like. So then I get all filtery and literal of what's the best right answer?
What do I want to share publicly?
Well, there's just so much. I always tell people it's such an honor to go in their hypnosis journey because it's such a vulnerable place and such deep things that we end up talking about. And so it's beautiful to kind of see that transformation that occurs. So maybe I can share from my past life reading that I had and how it helped me as a parent, for example.
Okay.
So I did a reading, and this is what makes it funny. because I have always been like into mediums or into psychics, and I'll go do readings. Same. And I'm always, because of the type A, I'm like, you tell me. I'm like,
yes,
tell me what I need to know. Right? Yeah. And I'm a closed book until they get like 10 things right.
And then you're like leaning in.
And
like,
then
okay.
But I don't want to give them too much, so I stay poker face, and I'm like, yes, go on. You know, because
you have a really good poker face too.
I do. So I just, because you never know. You hear the stories, and plus I'm already halfway suggestible because I'm walking into the session. So what's funny, to preface this, is whenever I have done any psychic reading, they always, with me and my current husband, like when we were dating at the time, they're like, oh, you never have to worry. He will never cheat on you. And I always would be like, that is literally not a question I have, but okay, go on. And so I would but it made me kind of giggle internally because I'm like, why are you guys saying that?
Yeah.
And like every psychic would always say that.
Wow.
First thing, that would always be. And
what do you make of that now?
And that was never a worry of mine, ever. And I'm like, that's not.
You're damn right he's not going to next.
I'm like, thank you. I'm perfect. So why would he? Also, like, I was going for other questions.
Right.
Give me better clarity. Fast forward to my past life session, and I was in a past life, and he cheated on me constantly. I was married to my current husband in this past life.
Wait.
Yes, my husband. Yeah. But we're in this past life.
Yeah.
And so he works construction in this lifetime. In that past lifetime, oh my God, I am attacking this mic. In this past lifetime, he...
Getting you worked up, just reliving this past experience.
A lot of rage. No, but he did construction in that past lifetime.
Okay.
And he would travel for the construction, and he cheated on me a lot. And so I was like heartbroken and like, oh, why does he not love me?
Did you go to this reading together?
No.
Okay. Because that would have been funny if he's like getting like blamed and he's like, dude.
He's just sitting there like, but me in this body, I did not do that. You know, kind of like they joke about when you cheat, your husband cheats on you in a dream.
Yes. And I wake up and I'm rage and he's like, here we go again. It's going to be one of those kind of mornings.
So funny. So it's so funny.
That is hilarious.
In that past lifetime, he cheated on me a lot. And this is another wild story is we had my stepson in this lifetime. He was our child in that past lifetime. And he was about 7, 8, 9-ish. And in that past lifetime, he died very suddenly from like an injury. And this was...
Yeah, what time of
it was like Roman times.
Oh, okay.
So like medical care, you know, like he just died from an injury. And again, heartbroken. I was like, oh my gosh, my baby boy, I'm a mess. What's funny is in this lifetime, present day, my stepson was about the same age.
Okay.
And he was going through really high anxiety and not an anxious child.
Okay.
I mean,
generally didn't present as anxious.
Not high anxiety, like normal age appropriate things. Anyways, at that time, he would call us all the time at his mom's house or be at our house and be like, I just feel like I'm going to die. Oh. And he was like having panic attacks. He was freaking out. And he's like, I just feel like I'm going to die. I just feel like I'm going to die. I can't explain it. I'm freaking out. Or he would be like, I'm so afraid one of you were going to die. And he was just crying in a mess. And and when I did that past life session, he was the same exact age. And so in my mind, and I told him this, I said, hey, I went to this past life session. And I'm like,
told him, okay.
And I was like, if you believe in past lives, and like, you know, him and I have always had this way of communicating. Like we've always been on the same wavelength. Like my husband jokes, he's like, you always know what he's thinking, or I can predict what he's going to say.
His life, by the way?
Right before he turned 2.
Okay.
So I've known him his whole life. So at this point, I'm like, hey, I went to this past life session and you died at this present age that you are today. I wonder if your body is remembering dying from this injury and your soul doesn't know what to do because it thinks it's about to die. But you're
most
not.
Moms are going to be hearing this saying, Jamie, why are you troubling your small child with this?
Because he's already troubled.
That's a very good point. He was
already like something. And what's wild is as soon as I told him that, anxiety stopped. Wow. He stopped calling us, crying.
To his soul.
Yes. He just goes, oh. And he goes, okay. Like a child. Like he was like, okay.
Accept.
And then
that answer.
I think it just kind of helped like calm his equilibrium of, oh, this is like, I'm not dying right now. my soul is remembering dying
something.
at another lifetime, another place and space. But this is where I'm at.
Okay. Wow. Yeah. Wow. And I think that was the story that you told me when I first met, not the first meeting, but, and you,
Day one,
yeah,
I come in.
I was like, I do remember coming home and telling my husband, Drew, like, so I met this girl and he's Catholic and like, was like, what? And
sounds like a quack.
But I do remember when you're telling me, like, you're saying like, it made sense to me. And that's what like, when I do inner child work with folks, it just makes sense to them. Like some folks are very like intellectualizers and they want me to explain all the stuff and I'm happy to explain. But some people are like, yeah, I get it. Let's like get me in the meditative state. Let's look inside. Let's see what comes up. Yeah. And they just, and I like, that's how, when you told me about it, it just made sense to me.
Right.
And so I didn't really need to like, research why it makes sense to me or whatever. Right. It's just like, it makes sense to me. Yeah. Yeah.
Well, and I love doing inner child work with hypnosis too, because in hypnosis in this lifetime, so in therapy, mental health therapy, I can have them go back to whatever age or stage that we need to be in.
Yes.
And then their grown-up self can walk into the scene or sometimes even like switch roles, like be your mom in that scene. Tell me what's going on in her head.
Yeah.
And they'll even talk different and like their tone is different. They'll behave differently.
Yes. That is my favorite work
they
to
can
do.
go into that headspace so much easier in a state of trance compared to like sometimes with talk therapy, they're like, that doesn't make sense. Why are you wanting me to do that? You know, but when I can get them in that relaxed state of mind, and I can just suggest, okay,
I have this EMDR trainer who I adore. And when we were doing our consultations, and I would be talking with her about like some inner child work that we were doing, and she would be telling me like I needed to, she was also trained in hypnosis. And so she would just make me laugh because she'd be like, well, you need to put them in a state of trance and hypnosis. Like, oh, remember, I'm not trained in that. She's like, oh, you need to get them in a deeper level of relaxation, like longer meditation. You know, it would like make me laugh because hypnosis seems so foreign to me because I'm not trained in it. So my brain is like, I can't use that language. That's not ethical. I'm not trained in that. So she would like bring me, she was like, Jessie, you are putting them in a relax, you know? And so it would just make me laugh because I was like, that is so woo-woo to me.
But
so much of it is like same but different.
Right?
Yeah.
Trance, dissociation, state of relaxation, right?
Yeah, it's so
all the
fascinating
same.
to me.
In my training class, it was myself and another therapist, and then just two other non-therapist hypnotherapists getting trained. And so it's funny because me and the other therapist were like, we're both trained in EMDR, and we're like, it's the same thing. And we were like, if people understood all of these healing modalities are so similar, we're just using different terminology.
Yes. And like a lot of the stuff that I talk about, if it doesn't resonate with you, that's find something that does, right? I want it to feel good to you. I want it to make sense to you. And then if that I am saying does feel good to you and it does resonate, like let's lean into it. And I had another thought, but I lost it. Darn it.
Oh, well, I was thinking
it'll come back. You give
kind
me
of
yours.
like your episode where you're like how to find the right therapist. I'm like, you'll find one who like speaks your language or uses the modality you want. And it just clicks. And it doesn't mean one modality is better than the other. Like only see EMDR, only go to brain spotting, right? Only do talk therapy. They all work. You just have to find what
actually helps me find my thought that I lost. Thank you. You led me back, which is a lot of us are saying the same things and in different, like a lot of the stuff that I am saying might seem revolutionary to someone who's never heard it before, but I'm saying things that I've been given through training and knowledge and experience, but a lot of it is regurgitated in different modalities or different. So find what resonates with you. And if it comes from a person where like that, like that makes sense to me. Because how many times do you hear something and then like my husband always laughs, like I'll be like, oh, my best friend Maggie told me blah, blah. And he's like, I've been telling you that.
I'm like, I didn't like your tone.
Something about your vibe, but Maggie said it and it clicked, right? And so, I think that's important too in finding somebody to support you along your healing journey, whether that's a therapist or not. But yeah,
absolutely. I also like to throw out to 100% interrupt is just for hypnosis and to at least go back to the legitimacy of it, I also like to tell people if they're really like, it does sound woo-woo, it has been used throughout history constantly. And for a while, it was the only way in which anesthesia was used until anesthesia was invented. So people have used it for amputations, for surgeries. Dentists still presently use it.
I self-hypnotized myself the other day after listening to the Shrink Show. You and your trainer were talking about it. And I literally had a root canal the next day.
Yes.
And so I did self-hypnosis. Like the night before that morning, I have major dental anxiety. And I have the worst genetic teeth. Sorry to cut you off, but like, I want to make sure and tell you that I'm grateful because it was so funny too. I brought my headphones too and like continued my guided meditation.
Yes.
And, the dentist, I was like, if you need me, tell me, but I'm going to be hypnotizing myself. And he goes, are you hypnotizing me? And I go, no, unless you want me to.
Yeah, girl. You know the rules.
And so we believe in consent. No, obviously we do. But what was crazy is like my brain was just like, oh, that was so easy. And then I had another dental procedure and I didn't do all that work because my brain told me I was good. I wasn't good. My whole body was tensing like this whole dental procedure. It was like 2.5 hours. It was just on Monday. And I had to like take a break and get out and stretch because my body had so much tension in it. I was so mad at myself. Like, Jessie, you knew that self-hypnosis worked last time. Why didn't you do it this time? I was so mad at myself. But sometimes I have to learn those hard lessons to see that something works. But now you know the difference.
Now you know when you get back in that dental chair to stay calm. But it is. And that really resonates with that point I said in the beginning. Hypnosis is just a focused state of attention. You were deliberately intending to focus on your self-hypnosis, and then you went back to the dentist and did not focus on that, right? And your focus probably was the actual dental procedure.
All the noises, all the sounds, all the horrific things.
Absolutely. But I just really like for people to understand it used to be recognized in the medical field. Anesthesia was invented, and then that's when a lot of the publicity of it's mind control, it doesn't work, there's no research, of course there's no funding for the research, there's layers, and I'm not saying everything else is better, but you have to know it has existed before. People and dentists still presently use it. I know that there are dental offices even in Omaha that just use hypnosis. And I think I talked about it in that Shrink Show episode with Lisa Parisian. And I was like, I read this article and it was just in the news. And this guy was like, I have to get a root canal and he has bad experiences with anesthesia. And so he was a hypnotherapist. And so he got permission with his dentist and a lot of communication beforehand to agree, I'm going to do self-hypnosis. I will signal to you when I am ready to the dentist, and then you can go ahead and keep going. And he did his self-hypnosis to like keep deepening and relaxing and not feel the pain and blah, blah, blah. And he did the entire root canal just with hypnosis for his form of painkiller and anesthesia.
Wow. He didn't, oh my gosh.
Not wild.
Yeah. So, well, it works, people. I'm here to tell you. I used it, and the contrast of not was awful. Well, Jaime, this has been such a fun conversation. I love connecting with you anytime that I get to. We always have such a good time together. But thank you for chatting with us about hypnosis and past life regression, just making it feel like practical and relatable and how it can help support people on their healing journey if they choose. And it's not just some woo-woo thing that we see on stages or in movies.
Yes.
Before we wrap up, can you share where our listeners can find your podcast, The Shrink Show, along with your practice and connect with you and follow all the cool things that you're doing and offering?
Yeah, absolutely. So my practice is Enlightened Counseling and Healing. I'm on the socials. It's at Enlightened Omaha or enlightenedomaha.com. And my podcast is The Shrink Show, and we talk about all the things. It is woo-woo, and sometimes it's mental health, and sometimes it's my husband who knows what he's going to say. So
I love it.
I'm on the socials at The Shrink Show, and I think that's it. Yeah.
Okay, awesome. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
So to our listeners, if you found this episode helpful, make sure to subscribe, share it with someone. Please leave a review. It really helps our show reach more moms. And if you're curious about hypnosis or past life regression, check out Jaime's work. Thanks so much. Take care of yourselves, and we'll see you next time at Omaha Mom Talks. Omaha Mom Talks. Real moms, authentic conversations, no filter needed.